So this morning, I am speaking with two of our alumni. Turns out both of them graduated in 2019. Ian graduated in the spring of 2019, Patrick a few months later in December. And I wanted to ask them, how is life after graduation? Was it easy to find a job? I know that both of them have actually been at the job and left it for a better place. So the focus is going to be on why did they choose UMass? It was so long ago, in 2015, I guess. And how was life in UMass? How did our program prepare them for their jobs? And generally give you impressions of the stories of two alumni of the program. So welcome Ian and Patrick. And shall we start with Ian because he's the older graduate?
Sure. Yeah, and I'll try and answer the questions in order as best I can. But so I'll start with, I guess why I even decided computer science and further on why UMass Dartmouth. In my senior year of high school, I was actually considering going pre-med. My dad's in the medical field, and I thought it might be an easy transition and get some help from him if I had any questions in school. But I always really liked computers. I liked taking them apart, building new ones, playing computer games, things like that. And my high school had this really cool opportunity to do an internship with the director of IT for the public school system. And he was a UMass Dartmouth alumni, actually. And it was an interesting circumstance where I actually had to be the IT support technician at the school a couple days a week because of some staffing problems. So I ended up, instead of doing it just one semester, I did it for the whole year. And kind of towards the end of the first semester, I was back and forth if I wanted to actually commit applications going pre-med, and I ended up talking to the director of IT. And I think we both decided that I liked the technology in the medical field better than I liked the actual practice of medicine and things like that. So I took a stab. I had never done programming before. I didn't really know what it was about, but I knew I liked technology. I was okay at math and science, so I decided to go to computer science. And off of his recommendation, I actually applied to UMass Dartmouth and eventually got in. So yeah, I was a freshman, never programmed before, never seen programming before, and took a Java class. And it was a bit of a culture shock. Studying in high school and things wasn't really necessary, but definitely a bit of a wake-up call. Just a completely different environment that I wasn't used to, things that I had never seen before, and had to teach myself some things. Got okay through freshman year. Sophomore year, was taking my procedural programming class in C with Professor Volova, and that was more of a wake-up call. But I was coming to my breaking point, and I went to Professor Volova's office, and we discussed that I should definitely stay in the major. I should really put my boots in the ground and actually give it a try, use the resources that I have available to me, with the TAs, some mentors and things like that. And it finally turned around. Things are starting to click finally. I was understanding more. But something that was still a little confusing to me is, why am I learning C programming in college? Nobody's using this in the industry. Not many companies at that time were really focused on Java development either, but it was a more modern language comparatively. And not until I got to senior year and senior design did I really understand why that path was taken. It's hard in the moment to understand, the reasoning behind those things, but it's to teach fundamentals and core concepts. Right. And these are things that I still use now in my job today. But being able to learn how to learn a programming language is really the best thing that can come from it, because getting into senior design, I had to design a mobile application. And further, so I had never done mobile development before. And even further, we were using React Native, which at the time was only 2 years old or 3 years old when we were designing it. So it was a very, very new language. It was JavaScript. I had never written JavaScript before, so I had to learn JavaScript and a JavaScript framework and mobile development, all for my senior design. But it was a lot of fun. It was a great challenge. It really, really challenged me to kind of figure out what I could do in this tight timeline. And I decided that I like being put under pressure. I think
didn't you have to take over the team lead position on your team?
I did have to do that. Yeah. So I originally didn't want to be the team lead because I had a lot of external responsibilities outside of class. I had a part-time job. I was working like 25 hours a week on campus, and I didn't think it would be right for me to put myself in a position where I'd have to give, that level of effort. I was obviously willing to program and do what I could for the team, but yeah, things were falling through with the previous team lead, and it was a better decision for everybody to kind of rearrange the team. So I ended up taking over responsibility for that towards the end of first semester, right before the MVP. Yeah, so I guess from that, so directly because of my senior design project and the way that we decided to design it, which is using React Native, and then we use a Node.js backend. Those were skills, not necessarily the React Native part, but JavaScript and JavaScript frameworks and more Node.js. That was something that I used directly out of school. So graduation, I believe, was on a Friday, and I moved my stuff out on Saturday. I spent time with my family on Sunday, and I started my job on Monday. Yeah, I started as a full stack developer, and I was able to get in right away. I was using, things that I had learned from my senior design project right away. I was using Node.js. I was using React, which is similar to React Native, but I had that experience because of my senior design project that kind of allowed me to get right in and actually provide some value right out of the gate. And then moving through, I learned a lot. It was kind of crazy thinking what I wrote for my senior design project, and then from that 6-month part of when I started my first job, going back and looking at that code, I wanted to redo the whole thing. There's lots of on the job training, and I guess that's one thing too that I should mention, that when eventually these students graduate and you get into the real world, you're not necessarily expected to know everything. So that's kind of, again, reinforcing teaching yourself how to teach yourself. So that you can learn programming languages, because you do a lot of on-the-job training.
Well, I wanted to mention in the meantime that Ian graduated from our program, and then he became a client for senior design right in the same fall of the year you graduated. Actually, I also must mention that I don't think I've ever told you that before, but it was your recommendation for sprint review reports. If you remember back then, the conversation we had. So it was your advice and your feedback, the whole reason behind the sprint review reports. So ever since then, that spring, after you recommended it in the fall, in the spring, it was immediately implemented. And it's still going on with hopefully a lot of success. But all of this knowledge and experience that you have accumulated and the feedback you're giving to our students is having a tremendous impact on the quality of the course.
Good.
So
Yeah.
thank you.
I'm just trying to remember what it was like for myself. It wasn't that long ago, but trying to remember the student that I was, and the things that I didn't know and what I was nervous about, and how my experience now can kind of, help alleviate some of those things for the current students.
I do remember your senior design presentation. It was really very engaging and very well done. Too bad I don't have a recording of it.
I could probably send you one. I think my dad took one, but.
All right. So can you share a bit about your job experience? Obviously, you were able to find job right away, even before graduation, I guess,
Yep.
to be able to begin on the Monday after graduation. I know you changed jobs during the pandemic. So how has the pandemic affected your life and your professional life?
Yeah, it was interesting. So, I mean, going from the classroom setting to the office setting is a bit different. You know, some things are mostly the same, but I had never really worked in an office environment before, and I was finally getting comfortable in it. It was probably about eight or so months into my professional careers when we got sent home to work from home indefinitely at that point during the pandemic. Um, and it became a bit different. I mean, my responsibilities are or were and still are to develop internal tools, websites, web applications, microservices, and things like that. So I don't necessarily need to be in the office, but there is something to be said about having people available to you that you could walk over to their desk and ask questions. And lots of companies really didn't have a communication strategy that was beneficial for everybody working at home. So the first little while after we got sent home was an interesting change, as I'm sure it was for most. But luckily, my job responsibilities weren't really negatively impacted, just kind of the communication. But yeah, I was a few months in. I was just about rounding my 1 year at my previous job when I got contacted on LinkedIn because of my affiliation with UMass Dartmouth to start a role at the UMass President's Office, working in IT, doing a similar job.
If I might inject here, so you mentioned LinkedIn.
Yep.
How important is it to maintain current profile, and what kind of information would you put on LinkedIn?
It's super important. I never really got it when I was in school, mainly because I didn't like my resume was short. I didn't quite have that many skills, but as you go on, things you start adding to your list. But yeah, it's definitely super important. There's a little flag on LinkedIn that lets recruiters know if you're looking for jobs. And when I was looking in the beginning of the spring semester, I mainly used LinkedIn to look for jobs. I had a few interviews from that, I think 5 or so, which I was pretty happy with. And I applied to many more than that, probably well over 100. But yeah, now going into my professional career, posting on LinkedIn, sharing things from other colleagues, your friends, your peers, things you're interested about, even little posts about what you're working on and some struggle that you had and how you overcame it. Those connections are huge, because later down the line, one person that saw some posts that you wrote or saw some skill assessment on LinkedIn that you passed may contact you for some job. But definitely important to keep up on LinkedIn.
Thank you. Maybe we're keeping Patrick silent. So Patrick, how much more different is your experience from Ian's?
So I have a lot of similarities actually with Ian, especially the pre-med part. So growing up, I come from a Haitian family, so it's either became a doctor or a lawyer. Those were the two main things that the parents want.
Similar for me, yeah. Back in my country, it was, again, you should be doctor or a lawyer.
So coming out of a doctor or lawyer. So basically, I spent my whole life coming up and saying, okay, I want to be a doctor. And then my last year of high school, a couple of months in, I'm like, okay, I don't want to be a doctor. I loved video games, and I said, I'm going to give computer science a try. And I think that's what draws a lot of people into computer science, the gaming aspect of it. And then coming in with no experience, a lot like Ian, right? The first year was Java, and the second year was procedural programming, C, etc. So that set me up for the foundations of what computer science is and how programming works. So it also gave me the background for what I originally went into, right, which were video games, right? Because for one of our
Okay, we have technical difficulties.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Hello? Hello, 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 hello.
Ah, there you go.
Okay, you can hear me now? What part did I
Yes.
cut out at? Okay.
You're fine now.
Okay, I'm fine now?
Mhm.
I don't know what the last part is that you guys heard.
You were talking about how you transitioned from video games to serious programming.
Yeah. So that the one of the projects for the last year, well, the last semester of freshman year, right? So second semester overall college, it was modifying a video game, right? With Java. So I think I froze again. Okay. Did it freeze again?
No, you're good.
It's fine.
Okay. Yeah. So we got okay. So we got to play with the video game, and that shaped my view on how programming is useful and how it's multi-purpose. So going forward with that experience that we got from programming and actually implementing something with code, I was able to use that and participate in a lot of hackathons. So that gave me a lot of boost when I was going into those programming competitions. So I could use whatever framework that we learned for programming and apply that to whatever we were trying to implement in the programming competitions. So through the base learning of UMass, I was able to gain the confidence needed and the experience needed for going into programming competitions. And in those programming competitions, I continue holding those skills and working around so that it could help even more with the projects
If
that we
I
had.
remember, actually, sorry to interrupt you, but if I remember, you won a hackathon or two, didn't you?
Yeah, I won a couple of prizes at a couple of them. So they're usually broad enough where you could compete in multiple categories. So made sure to go for a big swing at all of them. So I was usually came out on top. But yeah, that was also a great opportunity for meeting other students because you could see what the perspective is like from a student, let's say from Harvard or Yale. There's a lot of every year they have programming competitions from there. And you can see that the stuff that you're learning from UMass, it relates to it's computer science. So it relates to whatever it is that they're learning. So that was pretty eye-opening and good experience on that end too. So from the programming competitions, I was able to boost my resume, and thanks to a networking event at UMass, there were Dell recruiters that came on campus. It was my last semester, so December 2019. Well, towards November, I was able to get in touch with a couple of these people, and then by the end of the month, I was set up for February. So I was set to graduate in December, and then I had my job lined up a month later. So from work, it was 1 month in, and then the pandemic hit. So I spent a month in office, and then after that, it was all remote. And the transition was actually much smoother than I expected it would be. So the good thing about Dell is that they had all of their infrastructure is global, so we were able to use whatever resource they had to keep the work going. So it went to show how with computer science you could work anywhere that you want, and the infrastructure is there if depending on the company that you're at. And a lot of the companies now are doing that. So after spending a year over at Dell, so recently, February 5th, so about a week ago, I decided to take up a full-time startup with a friend. So we're working on a project. So the experience that I was able to gain all throughout college and then work and all that stuff, we're taking all that to try to make our own product, sell it, generate some revenue, see if we could make a change in the world. So yeah, that's the story. And
and your startup is with another alum. I don't remember when Andy graduated. After you, before you, I don't recall.
a semester after. It was just a semester. So he's class of 2020. So fall. I think spring 2020.
So he's like
yeah,
full
during the
pandemic cohort.
Yeah.
Well, it's nice. It's nice that you're pursuing your abilities and your dreams. And I wanted to touch up on your senior design. I invited Patrick last semester to guest speak for my senior design class. And he gave a presentation on Jira and Confluence and other Atlassian products. I have to say, this has been the most informative presentation in senior design ever. I don't know what you did, but now all the teams are using Jira with no issues at all. I don't know if any of them have reached to you with questions, but thank you for that. And the reason why I'm stressing on it so much is because a lot of companies use Jira, especially now with everything being remote. I suppose keeping track of tasks and what's done and what isn't done is taking on a new importance. So thank you very much for that. All right, folks, I think maybe we can wrap this up in a little bit, but let me ask you this. If you have one advice to give to new students, to incoming freshmen, what would it be? I know I'm putting you on the spot, so anything your gut says, what do you think is most important?
Reach out to faculty and reach out to the TAs and those who are there to help you. It's definitely scary. It definitely, it can make you feel like you're not up to par with some of the other students because you feel like you need to go out to help. But lots of students have had other opportunities that your high school may not have given you. So don't feel bad about reaching out, going to office hours, talking to the TAs and mentors, because it can really save your career moving forward.
I would say that it may also have very positive impact on your networking as well as networking skills. You never know who's going to help you a year or two down the road. I mean, Patrick is just now forming a startup with a friend. So that connection was made in college, Patrick?
Yes, it was. Since freshman year.
All right,
So,
and then your advice, please.
Okay, so I'd say make stuff, like whatever it is, just try to make it. Because as important as the theory is, if you've already worked or if you've tried implementing something with, let's say, a language or whatever it is, that theory helps reinforce whatever it is that you've learned. And since you just making things, it gives you the experience and it makes you learn on how things work, so that you could go and try to make bigger things and understand more of what's going on. So
I have to say that I remember you actually taught me the importance of hackathons. Initially, I have to admit, I have to be honest, I didn't think much of hackathons. But then when you relayed your experience, and as you started winning those things, it became very obvious how important these events are. So I'm guessing that it doesn't really matter if you don't win, but the fact that you take up the challenge and you're meeting other people, even if hackathons are online, I assume there's still positive networking event. So this is another thing that you taught me, the importance of hackathons. And just recently, actually, I was approached by the ACM Club to organize a hackathon in UMass. And I know that Ian was president of ACM. So since your presidency, there have been a few developments, but I'm hoping that we can be successful in organizing a hackathon. So Patrick, thank you for that.
of course. It's good to see UMass D having their own, because it doesn't make sense that Amherst has one, but we don't have ours yet. We have to have ours.
I agree. I agree. So any last minute advice that you guys have for students in general? Anything that will wrap this interview up so you can go back to your jobs?
The only other thing that I would say is just, I'm sure a lot of people are telling these students as they're deciding to go to computer science, but you're really choosing the right field, especially with, what's going on in the world, because like Patrick and I have said, it doesn't matter if you're working on the beach in Florida or your house in Massachusetts or another country, as long as you have internet access, you really can provide value for whatever company you end up working for. So heads down, ask questions. It's a fun time.
Thank you.
Yeah, to piggyback on Ian, what Ian said, yeah, completely agree with that. It's like you can't go wrong, because even if you don't like computer science in itself, you could use the skills for relating it to the domain that you're into. So
thank you
can't
for
go wrong.
telling. Thank you for saying that. This is actually very useful, because computer science does not mean that you're going to sit down and code all day long, not by any means. So, well, again, thank you folks for coming in today and sharing your experiences and your impressions of the program, as well as your job searching and professional experience. And on this note, I wish you having a pleasant day. Thank you for joining me.